Okay. They began this lesson by comparing and contrasting the concept of holiness that the Old Testament Jews had, comparing it with the concept of holiness that our Lord had. Okay. Now, there's a danger here. There's a danger here that sometimes, so like he said, in the Old Testament, holiness was about separation, right? Staying away from that which was impure, that which was unholy, that which was unclean, keeping the laws, setting yourself apart, kind of forming this clique of God's chosen people, okay? And then to the extreme, like he was speaking about, to the extreme, the zealots even finding that part of holiness meant hating those who were disregarding what was holy, okay? Yet Jesus comes then, and he seems to be breaking down the barriers. And so Jesus's idea of holiness at first looks like he just simply rejects all those other ways of thinking about holiness. But that's not entirely true, okay? If you think about it, Jesus is concerned about keeping the commandments. He is concerned about staying free of sin, being pure. You know, you just think about our sacramental life, right? When you come into relationship with the Lord, or when your parents bring you into a relationship with the Lord, what is the first sacrament that you receive? Baptism. What does baptism do? It cleanses us of sin. It infuses God's life into us so that we can live a life of grace. So Jesus is concerned, because sometimes I hear people who, these are extreme people though, who kind of just throw out the Old Testament altogether and say, no, Jesus has come, and they paint Jesus in this caricature like he's this, sorry, my pot-smoking hippie. And it's like, oh, it's all about love, and it's not about rules anymore, because rules are bad. What? No. Jesus says, I've come to fulfill the law. But he wants us to understand what the law truly is. The law truly was not about, wiping your cups clean and things like that. And so there has to be a balance struck between, yes, the Christian faith is about the fulfillment of the law. And the fulfillment of the law is love and mercy. But love and mercy also has to be proclaimed within truth. You can't cast one aside, okay? So the problem with us human beings, fallen human beings, is we tend to go too far one side, and then we go too far to the other side. So, like the Old Testament zealots, they wanted to keep the commandments so much so that if they saw you break the commandments, they were like, you're better off dead. Then you have the opposite extreme that says, oh no, Jesus didn't come here and he didn't care about the laws and stuff. And so you can be a believer in Jesus Christ and break every commandment. He still loves you. You're okay with him. No. And so how do we bring those two extremes to the middle to keep that proper balance? Okay? And that's always this shifting back and forth. So I want you to think about your own faith journey, okay, from childhood and your understanding of why you keep commandments. Why do you keep commandments? Usually when we're young, we keep commandments, we keep rules because we were told to, We were told to. And so the person who told us these particular commandments, whether they're religious commandments or household commandments or driving commandments, any law, okay? We at first accepted them because we realized that the person who gave them to us had authority over us. Okay? And then usually in our fallen human nature, then we start to try to buck the system because we're like, is it really real? Is that true, what they told me? So I'm going to try just a little bit to not do what they told me to do and see what happens, you know? And then sometimes we discover an immediate consequence of what they told us to do or not to do, and then we're convinced by it. You know, look both ways before you cross the street. And then one day we're like, why? And then you step out on the street and you almost get run over. Oh my goodness, my mom was right. Or Holy Mother Church says, go to Mass. And then you miss Mass. And then you're like, nothing happened to me. Like COVID time. You know, nothing happened to me. They gave us dispensations. We didn't have to go to Mass for all that. Nothing happened to me. So why do I need to start going again? You know, so then you have the opposite side where, okay, then they're convinced, then, you know what? Then what they told us was a fairy tale. You know? And then hopefully as you mature not only in your spiritual life, but mature in your understanding of the reality of the world, you begin to follow rules and commandments because you've now discovered actually there's a particular wisdom behind each of these things. Oh, it's good for me. That law is actually good for me. And that's why I want to obey it. You know, when I was a child, I looked both ways because Mom told me to look both ways. Now I look both ways because it's a wise thing to do, you know. When I was a child, I went to Mass because my parents woke me up to go to Mass. They made me go. Now, I want to go because I've discovered that it's food for my soul and that I'm empty without it, you know. And that's the measure, that's a sign of progress and maturity in our own life and especially in our spiritual life. And as you know, that's the hard part to try to convince other people. The hard part to convince our children and our teenagers. And it's the hard part to convince some adults, you know. But eventually then, what you discover, or hopefully as you grow in your knowledge and love of God, you know, I always go back, you know, if you kind of keep track of what I talk about in the past 10 years as being your pastor, I oftentimes go back to the Baltimore Catechism, the first question: why did God make us? There's just this beauty in the structure of the response. God made us to know Him, to love Him, to serve Him, so that we may be with Him in the life to come. Okay, know, love, and serve. And then it's that order. It's in that order to know God. And it makes sense. When you get to know someone, you grow to love them. And when you grow to love someone, you desire to do things in service for them. Know, love, and serve. And really, that is the pattern for our growth in the Lord. And it's a cyclical pattern. We repeat, and hopefully it's like the ascension of a mountain. That as you repeat and repeat, you grow higher and higher, closer to heaven. That's the whole purpose. And so that hopefully you reach a point of maturity in faith where you're not only trusting that God through His church has given us commandments, but that you know that those commandments are not only for our good, but then you also know that it is for our good and our way of showing our love back to God. That's why St. John the Apostle, it's amazing how he connects love with keeping the commandments. You know, he just blows out of the water the people with the attitude that no, loving God that means there's no laws and commandments. You just love Him. You just love him. That's not what St. John the Apostle believed. And St. John the Apostle is the beloved one. He's the one who experienced the love of God most closely, most intensely. He's the one who had the privilege of leaning his head against the chest, the Sacred Heart of Jesus at the Last Supper. It was an indication of how close he was with the Lord. And he is the one then that is writing to the church universal saying, if you love God, keep the commandments. And if you say you love God and you don't keep the commandments, you're a liar. That's it. It's as plain and simple, and it's as deep as that. You know? I keep the commandments because I know that God made these commandments for my good. But now I realize that I keep these commandments because I love God. And those of you who are parents, how many times did you tell your children, just do it because you love me? Come home on time because you love me. Don't stay out all hours of the night because you love me. You know? And that's what God is saying to us. Because it's good for us. Okay? And so I wanted to say that just because it seems to be a point of contention in our general society, is that there's this dichotomy posed between love and commandments. There is no dichotomy. For the true Christian, love and commandments go hand in hand. And I'm not talking about bad laws and bad commandments, you know, okay? So our country saying abortion is acceptable. No, that's a bad law. We don't respect that law, you know. But I'm talking about commandments that come from the Lord and just laws from our society, okay? All right? Okay, so that's my input for now. So what I'd like you to do is look at page 57.